Mario once again with my microflight. Um, I am working on recovering the wing here in this video. This is going to be a rather long video because I'm going to show you how I do these things. And this is just my approach, my technique. It's just the way I like assembling my particular models that I cover with these materials that you see here and in the way that I'm going to show you here. So I decided to remove the wings, number one, because they were installed backwards. The left was installed on the right and the right was installed on the left. So I just swapped those. Now it's properly set up here. Unfortunately, this video is capturing my wing as sort of a light tan color here, and it's actually green. For some reason, I have my filters. I don't know, something with the camera filters. It goes on and off. Depending on how I'm videotaping this. But anyway, what's more important here is not so much the colors as is the assembly here. Hands clean, nails trimmed. I'm sorry if my nails were a little disgusting in some other videos. I was working with chlorine, that was taking care of my pool, and so I'm just one person that likes working with the hands and not with so much with gloves, because they get a little cumbersome when you work with gloves. And so I was grabbing the chlorine tablets, and so I had a little chlorine. When the chlorine gets to your skin, it creates these white spots, and it looks like your hands are dirty or dusty. So I apologize if they came up in some other videos looking that way. But I typically, my hands are typically clean. So is what I'm trying to say. And your hands should be clean when you do these type of assemblies here. Especially when you work with materials that are white, and you don't want smears, you don't want you don't want greasy hands, you don't want wet hands, so you got to be dry and clean. Okay, that out of the way. It's important. It's like having part of the tools. You got to have the right tools. So what I'm doing right here is I explained a little bit in some other short video, is I cut these panels a little bit too short. And the reason why I did that is because I was going to use, I wasn't going to use, I actually used packaging tape, this stuff right here. And I use this Easy Start, I don't know, it's duct tape. It's called duct tape. It's pretty good stuff, for packaging. And it has a decent amount of grip on the adhesive. So I was using that, and so when I removed the wings, I decided to just come back and do this the way that I should have done it initially. Just had it extended the surface here, the material surface over, so that I can just wrap it over as I'm doing here. I've already done the corners here. I'll just come back here and show you what I did here. So I'm using segments of these tabs right here. And what I'm using is this, this is called, I believe this is called basting tape. And it's used for fabrics. If you're sewing fabrics, this stuff right here, you attach that to, let's say, a hem or something, and then it allows easier sewing. So I'm using that on this, on these sections right here, these tabs. So there's one section of this basting tab on that side and another on the other side. And as I unfold this, it just grabs onto the bottom of the surface of this material, as well as the top. It's almost invisible when you look at from far away, so you're not going to be able to tell that I even did this, with these pieces here. And basically that's what I'm doing here in this particular sections. I decided to go from underneath instead of going over it like I did with this one. I went with the tab over. So these are tabs, actually 5.5-inch tabs that I have spread out here along the edges of the leading and trailing edges. I already did the leading edges, but I'm just going to turn this around, and so you can see the result of that, and it's fairly clean, and that's not going anywhere when you use this stuff right here. At least not for a while, Now, if you have, if you keep your model in a hot hot weather and in a hot area, a hot garage or a shed, you know, it's probably going to disintegrate at some point. You know, so but it's not going to happen right away. So anyway, so I am what I'm doing here. I'm kind of working blindly, but I'm just by feel, and I'm kind of trying to find the the area where I can peel off that that strip there, that basting tape covering or protective strip. There we go. Well, it's fairly easy, you know, once you find that, and then I just peel that off. And then what I do is I grab the center of this long tab that's supporting the trailing edge, and then I just grab onto the, you know, I make sure that I grab that. I tug it. I pull towards that way as I'm grabbing also the carbon rod. And once I get that center nice and sealed there, then I work the rest of the way. It's really easy. It's a real simple process. You know, if you follow these steps right here, and you just take your time. So there you go. That's covered. This one's covered, and I have to cover these two sections right here. This works better once you have the geometry of the structure of the wing assembled, so that you know where you need to how much distance you're going to need for these flaps to fold over without interfering with these sections right here for the hinges of the aileron, or these connections here to the tail boom. And so you can see I actually cut this. I should have a scissors here. I actually cut this after the fact. You know, I had this actually as a one long tab, and then I realized, oh, I should have just cut this before I installed the wing. So I came back with my knife, and it's not really that clean, but it's not really that bad. Once this is covered, you know, you're not going to see this slight imperfection by doing this by hand. But on the model, it's a lot easier to have this flat on the table and score that with a knife, you know, nice and clean. So let's do this section right here. And once again, you know, I kind of try to feel. And when you work with a blade, you know, you just got to be careful that you don't poke yourself and cut yourself. I've done that many times, and anybody that has worked with these X-Acto blades probably knows that. You know, just got to be very careful, especially with a new blade. I try not to work with new blades when I'm doing this, and I'm working with a blade that, as I mentioned, I was trying to cut the mounts for my for the servos that are going on the base plate. So I was using this knife, so it's a little bit dulled already, and I'm just using it just to pry out the that protective strip that's on the basting tape. So there we go. It's just a matter of grabbing it. Once you grab that edge, come on, baby. This one I'm having a little bit of a hard time. Why? Come on. I may have to lift this up a little bit and see where that is. There we go. So you just have to kind of poke it a little bit, and it should come out rather easily here if you have pressed it good on the surface here. There we go. Okay, so once that's done, once again, you know, I grabbed it, I tensioned it, I pulled this towards the front because I'm working from the rear. Grab the center, make sure that it grabs on underneath, and then just run my fingers, my thumbs, and my index finger right underneath that, kind of to seal that surface, and there you go. So that's I'm not going to go through all these areas here. I still have to do the other wind, but I just wanted to capture this on video just to show you how I do these things and how it looks. And if you do something similar, you should have a similar result is the word that I'm using. God, I'm a little bit slow this morning here. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to add, this other tab right on the side here, and notice that I don't use the full length because this has a curvature here, and it's better to do this in sections. Let me just do this and show this on this video here. So right now what I'm doing off camera is I'm installing, or I'm placing the basting tape on the edges of this tab here, or this it's going to support or seal the edge. Okay, so there you go. You can see the basting tape on the edges there. Okay, so and then I'm not even going to fold this in half. These I kind of folded in half at the leading edge. At the trailing edge, I didn't fold in half because you don't know if you're going to have the exact half and half, 50% distance on the fold line that you're going to have to wrap this around. So it's better just to leave it full and then just pull it, tug it as I was showing earlier, and that way you have a clean line there. That way you don't have two lines, one fold line and another one from the actual wraparound. So in this case, I'm not going to fold this. I'm just going to use the tab as is. And then I'm going to come here, and I like to begin 1/2 inch from the very edge here of the of this rib here, so that it has some room there for this retainer tab to grab onto. And then actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish this right here because I want this nice and clean. So let me finish this tab right here. Okay, so now that I have that, I'm going to tug a little bit here, wrap and hold it with the carbon rod. Boom, nice and clean. See how that goes? It goes really, really nice and clean. And I hope my videos are capturing all these details here. I think they are, at least from my view here of the camera. So I have the camera on a little tripod. And as I'm doing this, just to make sure that the viewer can also have the experience as if you were next to me here watching me do this. So there you go. And there you have it. That's there pretty good. So there's a tab right there. Let me focus in on that section right there. And there's a tab. Grab my knife here because it's a little more colorful. There's a tab right here, just a 1-inch tab. This is a 2-inch tab that I'm using here to hold the wing. And that wing will, if you ever wanted to remove the wing, you'll just have to cut all these pieces, these areas here on the edges, and basically start from scratch if you were ever to want to redo the wing. Hopefully you did not make the mistake that I made, the error of installing the wings left to right and right to left. So you don't have to do what I did. I had to remove the wing, but actually it's working out good because, like I said, I had the clear tape before, and I didn't quite like that. So this is a lot better. It's a lot cleaner. As you can see, the wing, it looks a lot nicer. For some reason, my trailing edge it seems like it has a curvature, and it's not because it has a curvature physically, but it's because of the lens here on the camera. So it's capturing it's a curvature here. It does have a slight curvature at this end right here because this is where the wing connects to, and as it connects up, it's got a slight dihedral. Which is what you want, on a radio control model of this caliber. You want a slight dihedral, not totally flat, but not totally a V shape where it's distracting and it's going to hinder the operation especially with the ailerons. So the ailerons are actually the ones that are going to do the stabilization depending on the location of the ailerons, almost like washout. The way I like setting my models up is, especially with a dual servo, independent servo operation. Each servo is going to control independently the aileron, and so you can adjust your transmitter to have, and people that fly airplanes that have done this, even with the bigger models, you already know that. So this is more for somebody that's just starting out, perhaps, or somebody new, or somebody that's not aware of these things. But on ultralights have a little bit of washout at the wingtips. That's just the nature of you want to have that washout for stability's sake. It's just a little detail and a little tip, for anybody that has built little models. If you want a little more stability, it's imagine a bird, a falcon, or one of these birds. If you ever notice how they fly, they have the wingtips. The wingtips are kind of tipped up like that with a little bit of washout on those feathers, and that is what establishes the stability. That's how they're able to glide in stable mode. This is something that nobody taught me these things. I was actually one time on one of the mountains here in Arizona. I was watching how falcons fly, and I go, wow, that's that's exactly a washout, on a wing, on a wingtip. So that was the first time that I actually saw a bird with the same geometries, so to speak, as airplanes are used. So that's where it comes from. Basically, I'm pretty sure the early designers of aircraft, they probably observed the birds as I observed, that falcon one time while up in the mountains, and so that makes sense. When you look at those things and when you come across those things, say, oh wow, the birds have, that's it's just. It makes perfect logical sense. So same thing with airplanes. Like I said, the wing is, if you can put just a little bit of wash out there. And what in these particular models, what I like to do is I like to use the aileron as my washout. So when I set this up, I set the aileron just slightly up with an up angle, to create that swoop there, in reference to the wing. So that way the model is stable to be going with, but I also have the ability with an independent servo, as probably people that have built models and have set up their models already know, that you can establish flaps, with your ailerons. So this has a dual functionality. It not only control a little more precise control with the ailerons, but you can also set your ailerons to double up as flaps, when you're coming for a landing or when you're taking off even, just have a little more camber by having this type of angle here. The way you see it right here in this model right here, it just adds for a little more lift on the model. So those are things that, like I said, people that build models probably already know, but this is more for somebody that's stumbling on this video, perhaps for the first time. Okay, so this is the way that I cover my wings. This is the way that it should be properly covered with these materials that I'm using here. And I'm going to be doing the same thing. Reason why I have all those sections right there is because I'm going to be doing the same thing here. You see how this tape right here is just this surface right here was cut exactly to fit inside the profile of this frame right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend that when I cut, the material from those sections right there. I'm going to extend it so actually I could just reuse this and do the same thing that I'm doing with the wings. Just add these little sections right here. Actually, this one's going to be folded in half because the one that you got to start with a symmetry at one point, and typically, like I said, on the leading edge of the wing, I start with a folded section like that. So I can do that, and that'll be fine. And then these will have to be short pieces, and so on and so forth. So I am going to do that. I may not even need to cut those other ones. I may reserve those for another airplane. While I'm at it here, I mentioned that I'm doing this while my new base plate is being printed, 3D printed. And so in another video, let me remove this because it's a little annoying here with all these pieces here. Okay, so let's start with a clean slate here so we can see what we're talking about. Okay, so you can see how I already installed these servos on this base plate. Originally, I had one of these base plates, but I didn't have this battery support, so I started with just that little section right there, and then I went to this one. So this is my second iteration, and while at it, I decided to add a socket for an LED there, a front lamp. Then I had that. You can see those in my other videos. And then when I was ready to install these servos, I realized that I need to get these servos as far as possible to the front, because if I install them, if I were to install these servos as in the location where the location where these aileron servos are located, or a little further back, I still have to make up for the make up for the slight tail heavy tendency that this model has, because I added a little more length to the tail, just from an aesthetical point of view, just because I see those little nuances in those details, and to me this particular design that I did with these slight modifications, to this particular size. Now this is not in total. In total scale with my larger ones. My larger ones are, they're set, they're done. There's no changes there that I'm going to be doing. Those work just fine, and I really like the geometries on those. In this particular one, I had to massage some of those things just to make it work at this particular size. But I elongated the tail section as well as the front section. I elongated the front by 1 inch, and the height also by 1 inch, so where it's just perfect, to my liking. And as you'll probably see in my videos, I mean, this model is turning out to be quite a nice, realistic looking 2S Li-pol operation, 36-inch wingspan model. It's going to fly beautiful. Better than my blue one that I did a recent video with. So so in that process of I realized that I needed to locate these servos as far as possible, as far as front, so that I can have a little more weight at the front, and not have to add washers or added weight to the front that's not part of the model. When a model is properly designed, you should not have to add weight to the front end of the model. The model should be designed where it balances out with the standard equipment, with the motor, of course, where it's supposed to be, with the servos where they're supposed to be, where the battery is supposed to be, where the pilot's supposed to be, properly, so that it balances out without having to add washers or lead, to the front end of the model. Anytime I see a model with lead weight or washers or things like that, it's not something that I prefer doing. There are instances, I will say this, because there are instances where it just the geometry of the model just doesn't, as it was intended, does not lend itself to being that clean, and so you have to add a little more weight, or you have to go with a heavier battery. In that case, I would go with a heavier battery and just move, like I said, all these components towards the front, as I'm doing here. So this was my I think this was my third iteration of this base plate. After this, I decided, I need to locate those servos at the front, so I decided to add this piece right here. And this is like a secondary piece that I was going to use. That I mounted there, and I go, now it was bothering me. It's kind of cheesy, doing this piece. I don't like piecing things like that. And so I decided, let me go back to the drawing board. Went to my CAD model, and I decided to print this one here. I said, you know what, I'm going to print this. By the way, I also need to clear the servos. They can't be totally at the bottom, mounted at the bottom plate. So that's the reason for these posts here. To raise the servo so that they clear on the bottom. Otherwise, I would have had to enlarge my wheels, so to provide greater bottom to ground clearance. So I didn't want to do that. So I elevated these with these posts. However, when I printed this, I made a boo-boo, and because when I work on these things, it's a lot easier to grab geometry, especially in CAD. Just make a copy of that, post it over here, or put it here, and then that way you don't have to redraw the whole geometry. So I had the geometry of this post here, and I grabbed that and I moved it over here without doing a symmetrical, without turning it at 180 degrees, because that one has a slight offset on the mounting of the hole. And so when I did this distance became tighter. I didn't realize that, because like I said, sometimes you just don't see those things until you print the part. So I had to carve this with my knife. I just took my time, little by little, started carving that post, which was a good chunk of good chunk of plastic. Actually, I use this little serrated tool here that I've had for many years, hobby tool. So I started cutting that, and then I said to myself, it still bothers me when, I don't like cutting things and piecing things, and so I decided to go back once again. So this is almost we're talking about, this was my third iteration. This is my fourth iteration with this additional heel. This is my fifth, and now I'm in my sixth iteration, not considering that I also did this plate right here for the bottom of the seat where I was going to mount these servos originally. So, I didn't like this right here. And besides, it wasn't doing anything as far as the CG balance is concerned. I wanted a little more weight to the front. So this is kind of helping quite a bit here. And it's looking good, it's really easy to make these connections. You can service this really, really easy here because everything is at the front here, accessible, to the builder, to the user. And so, we can see the operation of the elevator and rudder vertical stabilizer combination right there. So it's working really nice. My structures are very true at 90 degrees, very horizontal, very symmetrical. So there's no reason why this should not fly like my blue one, or even better. I say even better, not because my blue one, it doesn't fly that well. It's better by meaning because this has another 2 inches of wingspan, and that is to allow for the additional weight of these. I'm using two servos. Originally, I was going to do this with one servo, which is differential control, but because these servos are light enough, and I'm just going by sort of a kind of eyeballing this in by feel. This is very lightweight. It's still, not even with my battery here, my 2-cell battery. These are the batteries that I use for these models. It's a 2-cell 0.35 or 350 milliamp hour, 0.35 amp or 350 milliamp hour Li-pol. And these are the ones that I use. I have some better ones also that have slightly higher amperage rating or capacity. But with that, it's kind of balancing already, right? Right now, it's balancing at the 30% mark, which is where these rods come down to, where they connect. That's 30%. Forward of that, at front, if I were to put my finger in front, which I can't because there's no room there, it's slightly tail heavy. So right there, it's slightly. Let's see if my camera can. So right here is slightly tail heavy. So with the addition of the